Hi, Pashi.
Hi, Sufi.
It's Tom Holland week. This is very exciting.
I know. Billy Elliot.
Oh, that's interesting that you're gonna call back Billy Elliot. A lot of people would have leaned right into Spiderman.
Yeah, no, I'm more of a Billy Elliot.
It's a really good Billy Elliot. But I guess that's not an impression of Billy Elliot because he wouldn't say his own name.
No, that's like someone who's like, dance. Dance,
Yeah,
boy.
somebody who's like, hey, enough talking, start dancing. Hey, Tom Holland is a giant clue. Do you know what superhero Bill Hader and I wrote a comic book about in 2008?
Spider-Man?
See, you do care.
I feel like I did read, that was like maybe the one comic book I read.
Oh, I'm a huge comic book fan, and I could not convince my younger brother Josh that it was a medium that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that you guys were really excited about that, and I was excited for how excited you were.
Oh, that's nice. It should be noted right now that my brother is wearing glasses and a piece of tape over the bridge of his nose. He looks like a dude in the 50s who exclusively read comic books.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm pulling some real NASA vibes right now. Some like 50s NASA vibes.
Mom and Dad are riding pretty high on their podcast appearance.
Yeah. Yeah. They say it came out pretty well. They've been listening. They like the song. I appreciate
That's
that.
very nice.
They gave me
They
that
are
moment.
also currently, they just had 52nd, 53rd wedding anniversary?
Yeah, I would guess 53.
53.
But I'm not sure. Yeah.
They're in Canada, and this just gives you guys, you've heard them on the podcast, so you might be worried they're not interesting all the time. But we get a text from them every day when they go on a vacation about who won that day's Scrabble game.
Yeah, and it's current as we record this, it is 1-1 with the rubber match yet to come.
So obviously we'll fill everybody in on that. They're also coming straight here next. We're going to entertain them. My wife and my family is going to entertain them. And Josh, could you just give the listeners a sense, because the last son they visited was you. How wet was your kitchen on a day-to-day based on when Mom and Dad were there?
Between the coffee and the soda stream, and then just like general, like trying to maybe mop up some of that wetness and somehow generating more of it. It's unbelievable. We had to buy those like those Swedish kitchen wipes that are just like insanely absorbent.
When they're over it, every morning you think you left a window open during a storm.
Yeah.
It's just small counter puddles everywhere they go.
We make like a big sort of pour over Chemex coffee thing. And there was like a little bit of coffee, like one more cup left in the thing. And Dad was like, can you make more coffee? And Mom was like, why don't you just heat up that coffee that's in there? And he was like, I don't like that. It's like, okay, I'll make another pot of coffee.
He's like, I need more things to make wet with.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I try to wake up before them, which isn't hard when they're here, and get it sort of at least get round
like
one.
lay down tarps.
Yeah.
Get those rain delay tarps out. I should note, and they're probably listening right now. This is us trying to take you down a peg after you were so red hot on the podcast. Although some social media feedback says Mom was pretty hard on Dad to only give him a 5 out of 10. People thought he did a lot better on the podcast than that.
Yeah. I also don't know if Mom yet has realized that you don't get paid to be on a podcast, because we get paid when we're guests on your show, because that's just the way it goes. Like when you're on a television show, when you're a guest on a talk show,
you get like a guild minimum to appear.
Yeah.
And it is under $1,000. And my mom talks about it like she just inherited Downton Abbey.
And then when they rerun it, you get residuals.
Yes. It should also note that Josh and my parents are always the guests on the Thanksgiving show on late night since the dawn of my late night era. And we always air Thanksgiving. NBC has a football game. They have the last football game. And so that is the highest rated night of the year for NBC. And therefore it's the highest rated episode of late night every year.
Yeah.
No exception. And my parents walk around very confident that they're the reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people People do like it, but yeah.
They do love it.
We get that bump.
We do. It is a Meyers family bump. And you know what? Let them have it. Let them have the bump for all I care.
Yeah.
Just try not to bump them when they're carrying a giant glass of water. Because it will slosh over the sides. Hey, I feel like I soft plugged the short Halloween, Bill Hader and Seth Meyers 2008 one-shot Spider-Man comic, but I'd like to now hard plug. Josh, do you mind if I hard plug some of my stand-up dates this summer that I've added due to my unscheduled free time off?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. I'm going to be at the Payomet Performing Arts Center on July 16th. That's in North Truro, Massachusetts.
Ooh, that's on the Cape.
Yeah, it is on the Cape. It's on the very tip of the Cape.
Yeah.
August 9th, I'm going to be at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. I know you live in LA, but that's always been my Hollywood.
Mm.
Then the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, there's two of them, in Tampa, Florida the next night. That's August 10th. And then August 11th, the Wind Creek Event Center in Bethlehem, PA. So Josh, what do you want me to do? Put you down for two in Tampa, two in Hollywood, Florida?
Yeah, I think I'm just I'll wait for the special. I'll wait for the special on this one.
That's very kind of you. I've been watching this transition. Again, I've been in the late night game now for almost, 9 years. Speaking of special, Tom Holland's a special guy.
Absolutely.
And a lovely sibling. Every time he comes on my show, he's got at least one of his brothers with him, and they are equally lovely. And I don't know about you, you're a little bit more jaded than me. I enjoyed talking to him.
He's so charming.
He's really charming.
Yeah, any curmudgeon qualities that I might have had going in, which I didn't have any. But
right.
Yeah, he will melt your heart. I'll say
he will melt your heart. So You know what? Put this on if you're feeling a little over the world right now, because he make you believe in it again. Please enjoy our conversation with Tom Holland.
Family trips with the Meyers brothers. Family trips with the Meyers brothers. Here we go.
Welcome to Family Trips with the Meyers brothers.
Nice to meet you, Josh. It's nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. My girlfriend also, Mackenzie, wanted me to say hello. You do not know her. Okay. She does not know you, but she insisted I say hello. Yeah.
So you were one of the first people I thought of for this podcast because, Tom, you've been on my show multiple times, and you have never been at my show without at least one of your family members with you. And
Absolutely.
I feel... So because I feel like backstage family, that's not make believe. If you have your family backstage, you're not pretending to be close. So you are I want to go through the list real quick. Dad, Dominic, Mom, Nikki.
Correct.
He's a comedian. She's a photographer.
Yes.
Then you have twin brothers, Harry and Sam, younger, and then a third brother. There's a fourth Holland boy, but that is Patty.
That is correct. Yes.
All right. So, first of all, I want to get into your childhood, but it feels like showbiz started when you were very young. And then, of course, your dad was an entertainer as well. Do you feel like you had any sort of conventional childhood, or did it always feel like a showbiz childhood?
It's interesting. I grew up in show business, but not because I chose to. And let me stress in saying it also wasn't because my parents were the mummager, dadager type people. They just thought that I loved dancing. It was something that I kind of excelled at, and they thought I would just really enjoy doing it. I had an audition for this show that came up pretty organically. I was auditioning for that show for 2 years. Again, my parents just thought it was a good exercise in character, something that would build character in me. I don't think they'd ever anticipated that I would get the gig. So when I got cast and I started performing in that show, at the time, it was really just like a summer camp. It wasn't like the beginning of a career. It wasn't keep your head down, son, because maybe you'll get an agent out of this. It was just enjoy yourself. This is a crazy experience. You're performing on the West End at 11. Enjoy yourself. And everything that came after that wasn't planned. It wasn't something we looked for. I wasn't, gunning for an agent or gunning for a film. I just was lucky that this lady came to see the show. She signed me. we sort of thought as a family, like, why not? There's no harm in saying no. She sent me a script, an audition. I went to the audition. I thought nothing of it. I got the part. I was then in Thailand with Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. And I just was like, I'm going to be an actor. This is really cool.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, so I'm lucky enough to know some of these details because, first of all, you like dancing,
Yeah.
and so your mom enrolls you. And I do feel like, if I remember correctly, the name of the dance studio is Nifty Feet.
Yes. Wow. Well done, Seth. Jeez.
We had a little bit of fun with Nifty Feet. Nifty Feet sounds like a British film that came out in the 90s that I missed. You know what I mean?
It sounds like a film that I should make, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Nifty Feet was this really great little dance school. It was every Saturday. It was at the YMCA. And we would go there, and it was like a sort of naff street dance club. And it just so happened that the lady that owned the school was very close with the casting director of Billy Elliot. So it was all super organic. But I had so much fun at Nifty Feet. I loved expressing myself. I loved learning how to dance. I thought it was really fun. I loved that one time we did this show at the Wimbledon Fete. Now, the Wimbledon Fete is a very, very well-to-do occasion. Wimbledon, obviously, where Wimbledon tennis is, very high-end part of London, very, very posh kind of clientele. And we did a street dance show, and the street dance teacher did not get the not explicit versions of the songs. So I remember my granny being there, and my parents, and all of these really, really posh people who'd come to watch these little kids dance. And the language was pretty bad. So I do remember that being rather funny.
Were there monocles just dropping left
Just
and right?
canes hitting the floor, people saying, outrage, order. It was like the House of Commons all of a sudden.
You could still hear the clatter of the canes. I will say, even posh or not, I do feel like, and I don't want to judge, I've never been a dance instructor, I feel like you should probably get the clean version no matter where the kids are from.
Long when they're 9 years old, you know.
9 years old, yeah. So when you were doing Billy Elliot, was that year round? How long did you do it?
There would typically be 4 of us in the show playing Billy, and we would alternate. Hard times, there was 3 of us, which was tough because you had to take up a lot of, pick up a lot of the slack. There was a few times in my run there where we had 5 Billies, which was glorious because, at that time I was the more senior Billy, so I was getting the Saturday shows and the Friday night shows, which was awesome. I did 176 shows. It was the time of my life. I was a young kid performing on the West End, dancing my heart out, and we had these ballet girl teams. There was 3 teams. All of us had girlfriends in every team because they were all never in the theatre at the same time. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. I look back on it very fondly, and it changed my life. It gave me such a wonderful background, such a great kind of education into work ethic, professionalism, performing at the highest level, and working with adults, which was weird for me, actually. When I went back to school, I was so used to doing as I was told and being professional. And when the adult in the room is talking, you're listening. So when I went back to my very regular rugby school and the teacher would be like, quiet, and no one would be quiet, I remember really struggling to fit in because I was different. I was, I guess, more mature at the time.
Did you ever think about touring with Billy Elliot, or was I guess once you've done the West End, there'd be Broadway or...
To be perfectly honest with you, when I was in the show, I don't know if you've seen the show. It's a very difficult show to take on tour. So I think at that time they might have been talking about it. But I was so lucky that I ended up in that film with Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor that I kind of missed that part of the Billy Elliot experience and just went on to do films and sort of start that next chapter of my career.
So that film is The Impossible. And I know that was an incredibly arduous film physically, a lot of acting in water tanks.
Right.
And then, of course, I don't have to tell any of our listeners that you've taken on the arduous work of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With that said, was Billy Elliot the most physically taxing thing you've done?
I think it probably was, I remember we have this thing in the UK called the bleep test, I don't know if you guys have it here, but it's like a fitness test that they do for athletes where you're in a hall, you're on a field, there's 2 points, there's A and B. Let's say they're 100 meters apart. 100 meters might be a bit far. Let's say 50 meters apart. And you have to run between the two markers. And each time you get from A to B, there's a bleep. And the bleep gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And if you don't make it to the other side before the bleep, you're out. And I remember when I finished Billy Elliot and I came back to school, I absolutely pissed the bleep test. Like annihilated the rugby team, annihilated the football team, because I was just so fit. And then I remember the teachers putting me in all the football teams and rugby teams, and I was like, "No, darling, I'm a dancer. I'm not into the team sport thing yet." But it was definitely very physical. There's no hanging upside down. There's no fighting. There's no stunts or dangerous stuff with Billy Elliot. It's all just fitness. But it was amazing. I had such a good time.
Were you judged at all by your classmates for returning to school as this West End dancer performer?
Yeah, there was a little bit of it. You know, going to a rugby school and being the one kid that does ballet is always a tricky conversation.
It does seem like Act 1 of Nifty Feet.
Exactly, right. Act 1 of Nifty Feet, the hardships of being a ballet dancer in tough Wimbledon. But yeah, as much as I tried to convince the guys in my school that I was like, no, it's just me in a classroom with 30 girls in tights. Like, I'm telling you, this is way better than rugby. No one believed me. So it was a tough time, but, you know, I had good friends there and I got through it and I'm happy now.
You were like, there are 3 groups of female dance teams. There's 3 other Billies. You can't believe what you get away with.
It's unbelievable.
So your brothers, your first set, the twins, Harry and Sam, they're 4 years younger than you. Is that right?
They are 3 years younger than me, yeah.
Were they aware when you first start doing Billy Elliot on the West End? I'm assuming they're old enough to come, so they're 6, 7 years old, right?
They would have been aware. They would have been old enough to kind of understand that it was a pretty cool thing. My little brother, Paddy, would have been really young, like 3 or 4 maybe, and he saw me do the show once. And there's this really impressive sequence in the show called Dream Ballet where Billy does a duet with his older self, and ultimately at the end of the dance, he's flying around the stage on a wire. There's dry ice everywhere. It's to Swan Lake. It's a beautiful number. It's super, super impressive. But it's right after the interval. So my mum's sitting there with my brother Paddy, who must have been no older than 4 at the time. She's watching the show. She turns to Paddy and she goes, "Paddy, what do you think?" And he was smashing one of those ice creams and he just went, "Yum." Completely like not focusing on what was happening at all.
My wife took our oldest to see The Lion King when he was 6. And I was so excited to get him to report back. But what happened, he had never been up that late. He went to an evening showing of The Lion King, and when it was over, they took a taxi. We lived downtown, and so he had never been in Times Square at night. And so I asked, like, "Tell me about The Lion King." He's like, there's nothing about The Lion King that's more interesting. Do you know anything about the city we live in?
Yeah.
It is insane. There are so many lights there. And I was like, oh, yeah, we should have introduced him to Times Square first before he could enjoy
I wanted to buy your kids stuff. I remember, Seth, like glow-in-the-dark stuff, like to play with at night. And then I was like, they've never even seen night. Like they don't exist in the night. They're too little.
Right. When you have kids, Tom, put them in bed. We put them to bed at 6:30 and we still have a life.
Okay,
and,
good.
They will eventually get onto you because right now, like it's bedtime and they're like pulling the shades back and saying, "Is it though?
Really bedtime?" That's when you need those shades that like are attached to the side of the windows. It's somewhat more like a prison cell at that point, but
prison
shades,
like
who cares? You need your sleep. You know, you're a busy guy, Seth.
So your dad's a comedian.
Yes.
I was reading up. He was at Edinburgh. He won Best Newcomer at the Edinburgh Fringe in 1993.
Yep.
Josh and I both performed at Edinburgh.
No way.
We only missed him by a few years. We were there in the late 90s doing shows.
What did you guys do there? Stand up?
We had been at a sketch comedy improv troupe in Amsterdam, of all places.
Okay.
And so we came over and we did that sort of improv show. Then there was a year that I was doing a 2-person show and I had to leave about a week before the end of our run because I had gotten hired on SNL. And Josh actually stepped in and did my part for a full week.
Wow. How was that, Josh?
It was great because I would finish the show that I was doing, which was down the road at the Pleasance, and right from the curtain call, I would book sort of up the cobblestone streets to get to whatever theater they were performing at, and I would just step in. And I watched that show so many times. that I sort of knew it backwards and forwards. And also a lot of it was improv. And they were nominated for a Perrier, I remember. So I never said that I was Josh because you were still in the running.
Sure, right.
And yeah. And I was like, well, if they're going to win, we can't say that he bailed on it. So we just sort of...
I tell you what.
Yeah, it was a weird whisper. And people were like, you look taller. Or you look... Yeah.
You guys definitely do look like brothers. Like there was no confusing you two when everyone popped on the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes. If you haven't seen one of us for a while, it's easy to get it mistaken. Like if we're right next to each other, you can tell the difference. But
Josh, have you ever thought about hosting the show and just not addressing it and just seeing what happens?
Yeah. I mean, I think I could fool some people. I'm
you
sure.
Should just do it and never talk about it. Just never once bring it up.
Yeah. I think we could at least fool some foreign markets.
Yeah.
You know, English is a second language. You might not quite notice the nuance.
I was once at a party with talking to a girl that Seth had dated years and years ago, and we were just having a nice catch up, and we knew each other, and we're friendly. And at some point, she was like, "I'm sorry, I have to walk away now. It's just this is a little too weird." And I was like, "Oh, okay,
brilliant, thank you."
He was like, "Okay, yep, goodbye."
I guess that means I was a heck of a guy.
A heck of a guy. I tell you, we was just talking about Edinburgh. How amazing is that place though during the festival?
It's the best.
There's nothing quite like that.
Again, we are talking about travel. I would recommend to anybody. First of all, Edinburgh is a beautiful city.
Amazing.
Never more so than August.
Yeah.
The greenest place, one of the greener places I've ever been. They're just shows all day, from dance to theater to comedy. Mm-hmm. And you could just go from show to show to show with a little bit of time in between to maybe have a nice beer.
Absolutely.
It's the best. And your dad went back recently, right?
Yeah. I was going to say one of my fondest family memories was my dad did Edinburgh maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago. His show was called Eclipsed. It was this kind of very funny take on my career, and his career was kind of what his set was about. It was a real family affair. Like my brother Sam did all the lights for him. My mum was front of house. My brother Harry and I were in Canada shooting a film, and we managed to somehow get all the way to Edinburgh without him finding out. We surprised him at this weird little campsite that we were staying at while he was doing the show. It was honestly like such an amazing family experience for us to be there, to see him perform. He did one of those gigs where you didn't have to pay to go, but you could pay if you felt like he did a good job. So we'd all be standing outside with these buckets and people would be throwing pounds at us and stuff. And it was an amazing experience. And seeing my dad in his element and doing what he does best is awesome. It was such a pleasure.
Because you probably missed it to some degree. As a young person, you weren't going out on tour with your dad, right? And seeing him do comedy? Because that's not a very easy thing to bring kids to.
Yeah, 100% not. I mean, I've seen my dad a handful of times when it's been, on his terms. I don't think my dad would like us just to show up at a gig.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like. It's added pressure. I mean, we went to the Comedy Cellar last night. We had a great time. Lucky that we saw fantastic comedians with a great room. Everything seemed to go really well. But I've been to nights like that where you've got all the ingredients, but for some reason it just tastes like shit and it doesn't work. So I can see how someone wouldn't want a surprise visit from his son and all of his friends. But I've seen my dad a handful of times. I cannot believe how terrifying it must be doing stand-up.
Yeah.
I love stand-ups. I love the world. I think it's so interesting because when I work, I get picked up in the morning. Someone makes my breakfast. Someone does my hair and makeup. Someone puts on my costume. Someone tells me what to say. Someone tells me where to stand. And they call us artists. And when you're backstage at a comedy show, you see, your favorite comic show up in a raincoat, rip off the jacket, go on stage, rip it for 10 minutes and go to the next club. I just think that it is such a raw form of entertainment that is so exposing. I was sitting there with my brother last night, as why we're here on this podcast. I'm always with a brother. We're at the comedy club and we're like, can you believe that dad made a living out of doing this day in and day out, club to club? I admire my dad. I think he's an amazing comedian, but he's an unbelievably wonderful dad. And the fact that he was able to be a great dad and also do that for a living is a real testament to who he is as a person.
It's interesting because obviously he knows showbiz, and then his kids go into showbiz because your brothers have as well. Yeah. I would be worried if my kids went into show business as well, because I know all the anxiety about it. But at least I feel like your dad can say, well, I had it worse.
Right.
At least they're not going to the stand-up clubs, because that would be, the day my son says I'm going to try to do 5 minutes at the Cellar is the day I can't sleep.
It's so funny you say that, though, because I'm watching the comics last night at the Cellar, and like, I've thought about material and I've thought about putting sets together because I just admire it. I think it's such an amazing thing to be able to do. And I'm sitting there and I'm with my brother and I'm like, would you get up there? And he's like, bro, I can't stop thinking about getting up there. I'm like, well, fucking go. Like, I'm sure we can pull some strings here and say, like, you want to do 5 minutes. And as soon as like the actual opportunity to do it comes up, you're like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I can sit here right now and be like, yeah, I'll rip the shit out of a room for 10 minutes. Give me the opportunity. I'll be like, oh no, I don't feel like I can do that.
The hardest I ever bombed was in Edinburgh.
Okay.
So I was doing this 2-person sketch improv show. And I don't know if you ever went to Leighton Live or if it still even exists, but it would start at 1 a.m. and it would be just sets from different comedians who were doing shows at Edinburgh. It was sort of a best of. And so it was mostly locals that would come for a cheaper ticket to see all the best acts. And our show was getting very well reviewed. Audiences liked it, but it was not a stand-up show. It was a 2-person improv show.
Okay.
And we got invited to do Leighton Live, and we thought, well, we can't possibly say no. This is too exciting. And trying to do improv comedy in a room full of very inebriated Scots was the worst. And my brother was in the audience. And let me just say, Tom, I am very lucky. Like you, I have an incredibly supportive brother. And usually when I walk off stage and if I'm spitting out that I didn't think it was a good show, he's there to tell me it was way better than you thought it was. And that was one time where he just looked at me and just was, that was real bad.
It was rough. Because that show also sort of invited people to heckle.
Right.
It was understood that this is Leighton Live. It is, well-known comedians. They're going to be trying new stuff, but also like sort of throw you to the lions. Sure. And there was a 1-word review that someone yelled out to you, Seth, or maybe it was 2.
So we bombed. And then I do remember we bombed, but then we got 50 pounds for showing up there. And so me and my partner, Jill, I said, you know what? This proves we did a thing. And then I had to go back into the theater to grab one of our friends. And they were saying goodnight. And they were listing all the comedians. And they were getting applause. And then they got to us. The name of our show was Pickups and Hiccups. And they said, and give it up for Pickups and Hiccups. Dead silence, except one guy went, shite! And it was just while I was standing there.
Shite! Absolutely fucking shite! That's funny. How do you deal with that sort of stuff? Like, obviously, so to try and merge two worlds, I've had a similar experience this past week. We were just talking about the reviews of The Crowded Room.
Yep.
They weren't what we were expecting. Delighted to say that audiences seem to be loving it now. I try to take a really positive approach, but I'm able to see that it's not a personal attack. But I imagine as a comic coming off of stage, having not done a good set, it must feel really personal.
Right. And we were saying, I do appreciate critics taking the time. They're not always going to like your work. But I do, if a critic actually sits down and writes thoughtfully about what did or in some cases did not work, that is easier to say. It's not personal. When a Scottish guy yells shite, it does feel like maybe less thought went into it. And it does sort of hit you in the personal part of your psyche. But I mean, ultimately, I do think people show up wanting to be entertained.
Right.
So, that is, and you have to be thankful and grateful for that.
Okay.
So if people don't like it, I try not to blame an audience. And I certainly try not to blame critics as well.
Of course.
But it is tough. There's no easy way
to deal with
other than just to keep moving forward.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to just keep moving forward, and comedians must have the thickest skin of anyone, because to be able to, the highs and lows of being a comic must be such an interesting balance. But my dad told me about a show when he was a kid. I'm not sure it still goes on now, and it was called The Gong Show.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And he used to say that like that was an audience that wanted you to fail. They didn't want you to be there. He said you maybe had enough time to get one joke out. And if that joke came out, they laughed. That was it. That's all you were getting. He told us the story the first time he ever did a show, and he absolutely fell on his ass. And we're like, but why did you do it again? Like, what what's wrong with you? Why would you put yourself through that again? So I've always really admired my dad's resilience. You know, he's pretty sturdy bloke.
And I think that they say one of the smart things to do when you're writing as a comedian is to write what you know. And that last Edinburgh show was about the fact, was it called Eclipsed?
Yeah, it was called Eclipsed, yeah.
And so your dad was fairly well known there.
Right.
And I think certainly when you first became the Tom Holland we know today, I'm assuming people in England would say, oh, that's Dominic Holland's kid.
Right.
And so, you began as this is interesting, the son of a celebrity.
Sure.
And then your dad basically wrote a show about how he is now the father of a celebrity.
Yeah, right. It went from like, oh, that's Dom's kid to that's Tom's dad. And it's great. The show was brilliant. He actually wrote a book about it. He has a book called Eclipsed, which is a wonderful read. And it's insight into his early career, insight into my early career, the parallels between the two, where I was lucky enough to sort of reach the kind of success I'm seeing now and the things that didn't kind of work out for him. But it's nice for us as a family to have that piece of work because it's such a great, it's like a memoir. It's like a diary of our life. So it's really nice to go back and read that.
It's also nice that the way he chose to do it was in a really positive sort of share with the world, both book and show,
Sure.
as opposed to just wait to like a very drunken family dinner.
And it also, yeah, you're right. Like it came from a place of love. It wasn't like I'm really jealous of my son and this is my ploy to like bring him down a peg or two. It was all like it was a great show. I wonder if he has a recording of it. I'd love to see that show again. It was a lot of fun.
So I guess I want to get back to sort of the theme of our show. Did you, as a family, were you, with the six of you, take trips together? Was that something that happened in your youth?
It's something we still do now. It's something like it's really a big part of our year. Something my mum is, she's the boss of the family and she organizes the trips and she decides on where we go. We've been all over the world. We've been so lucky as a family. Sometimes it's been where I'm working, Thailand. We did 5 months in Thailand to shoot that movie. We've been to Africa, I don't think I did South America with my mum for a film, which was the most hilarious experience of all time because the American producers made it seem like we were in the most dangerous place in the world and sent us this document of like what to do, what not to do. They went as far as telling my mum that she should wrap her hair up and not speak English in public. And we were like, I think you're over-egging where we are. Like, you can relax. So I've got hilarious videos of my mum sitting in bed just absolutely petrified. But we had a wonderful time. We were in Cartagena in Colombia for 8 weeks, and it was amazing. I loved it.
Does she travel well in general? Is your mom a good travel companion?
She is a good travel companion. My parents are terrible flyers just because it's something I do every week. I'm on a plane going somewhere every week. There's no reason for flying to be stressful. It's a relatively easy task. And flying with my parents is like traveling with two toddlers who refuse to give up control. I travel every week. I'm on a plane every week going somewhere new. And when I fly with my parents, they're still adamant that I'm not old enough to look after my passport. My dad has this like stupid little bum bag thing he wears. You guys call it a fanny pack. And he has all the passports in it. And he's constantly panicking because he can't find one of the passports. And it's because I've put my foot down. I'm like, Dad, I can look after my own passport. It's fine. So we travel all the time. How about you guys? Do you ever do trips with both your families?
I do just want to say real quick that I thought fanny pack was the worst possible name for it, but I do think bum bag is a little bit worse.
That's what we call it, a bum bag, yeah.
Yeah. I apologize to the fanny pack name.
In England, a fanny is what we would refer to as a vagina. That's what it's short slang for us. And I did this thing for Spiderman 1 where I went undercover as an American student at the Bronx School of Science.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for like
Very
5
fitting.
days. I was under the radar. And I remember the teacher telling me to sit on my fanny. And as a Brit, I was like, what are you talking about? You can't say that. And I had no idea that it meant bum. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. We have a friend whose father, I think, got married for the third time. And he was like, he devoted to his fanny pack. And part of the agreement on that third marriage was like, you got to retire that thing. You can't wear it anymore. And he gave it up. Yeah.
We traveled a lot as kids, but we never left the country. Did you come to the States before your showbiz career?
I don't think we never came to America. No, not before show business. It was a bit far and expensive for us as kids. You know, when we were younger, it would be trips to Spain and France and Portugal and places that are neighboring the UK. You know, we're so spoiled in Europe, being able to hop on a plane in 2 hours, you're in a completely different country with different culture and food and all that sort of stuff. So I think as Europeans, we typically stayed within the kind of 3-hour flight radius, let's say. And then as we grew up a little bit, and, you know, we wanted to sort of explore the world, we did safaris in Africa and my brothers went traveling through Australia. And we've been very lucky to travel to the places we've been.
As kids, were they culture vacations or beach vacations?
Mainly culture vacations. Our family's very proactive. We're very into, let's go scuba diving. Let's go hiking up the mountain. Let's go do all these sorts of stuff. Let's try the food. Let's go and meet the people that live in the authentic cultural town down the road, you know? And as kids, I think we probably thought that was kind of boring. But now as we've grown up, one of my favorite things about my job is traveling to a new place, getting to spend a few months there and just really diving into the culture and meeting the people. And I love that I have really random friends dotted around the world, from different beach bars to villages to all that sort of stuff.
Did you have vacations that sort of like ever went wrong? Or do you have any like, oh yeah, that one, we missed the mark on that?
We had a vacation in Portugal where we all got the most severe stomach bug. And it was just, we were in a villa. It was me, my entire family, my auntie Sarah and Tim and their 3 kids. And there was 9 of us just violently vomiting. And I don't know about you, Josh, if you have kids, but I can imagine like when your kids are sick, Seth, that must just be feeling like the end of the world. But when you're like looking after your kid and also throwing up into the same bucket, it was just the most brutal week. And it was literally like the day we left was the day that we all had broken the sickness. It was brutal.
Well, that's the way. Leave it in Portugal.
Yeah.
When you would travel as kids, how would the sort of sleeping arrangement work? Did you have to sort of share a room with all your brothers?
We would share rooms. Yeah, we would always share rooms. I mean, typically now I'm going on a golf holiday in 3 weeks, 3 weeks or 4 weeks, with like 8 of us. And I know that one of my brothers will be my bunk partner for the 4 days that we're there. So we're always chopping and changing, sharing rooms, top and tailing. It's something we still do today.
Golf is a real release for you, right?
It is.
I mean,
it is
I think
the
it
vice.
speaks to how stressful, this is how stressful your life is that golf is relaxing.
And what's so interesting is like, I went away this weekend to play golf, to get away from the city and, you know, to focus on something positive. And I'm like 9 holes into my first round and I'm saying like, why do I do this to myself? Like I was upset before, now I'm miserable.
Do you ever like play scrambles and take it away from your own personal score?
So exactly, Josh. I got to the turn on the first round. I said, guys, I can't take this anymore. Like, can we please play a scramble? You're supposed to have 14 clubs in your bag. I came back this weekend with 9. So
Oh, so from just tossing them?
Just over my knee, back of my neck, just
great.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
I
wow.
see. This brings me, and I apologize that your rage brings me joy because I find you so effervescent a personality.
Right.
It makes me happy that golf can also break you.
It's so funny. Zendaya came to play golf with me the other day, and I'm delighted to say she loved it. She had a great time. But
First time? Was it the first time?
this was the second time she had come to play
Okay,
golf
great.
with me. There was a point in time where we're driving the buggy, and she was like, "Why are you so angry?" I was like, "Oh, you don't understand. I've played this game for over 20 years, and I feel like I'm not going anywhere, and it's really difficult." And she's like, "But it's a game. You're here with your friends playing a game. Enjoy yourself." And I'm like, "No, you're right. You're totally right. And I wish I had that mindset, but I can't do that right now."
That's a conversation my wife has with me about just being a sports fan and how I react. And it's the worst part about when they make that argument is there's no rational counter argument.
No,
of course they're right.
100%.
And yet you just want to say it's too late for me. It's just too late for me.
It's like my emotions have peaked and I just have to wait for them to plateau. So I'm going to do what
Yeah.
I can to try and manage my emotions. But what sport are you into?
Well, Josh is as a viewer, I'm a American football fan. And I would say that's the one that still has the biggest emotional grip on me. Our dad is from Pittsburgh, and so once a year we go and see a Steeler game together. It's a wonderful vacation, but the problem is the games are on Sunday, and so it's the last thing that happens is the outcome of a game.
Right.
And so sometimes you do feel as though no matter how good the dinners are and how fun playing cards at the hotel bar has been, if the Steelers lose on the Sunday, you could just get on the plane angry.
Right, totally. Yeah. It's make or break.
It's make or break.
But I would say Seth and my father are really, they wallow in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's a sign of character.
Yeah, we call our parents on Sunday, and if you call after the game, my parents also will always jump on together, so they're on speakerphone.
Right.
And if the Steelers have lost, all we're going to talk about is how bad the offensive line was, and it's just a drag. I almost need to split them up for that conversation, because I'll talk to mom and she'll be able to talk about her week and her book club and her golf leagues and things like that. But dad has nothing to talk about other than how bad the Steelers were on a week with a loss.
Crazy, yeah.
So we used to golf as a family, Tom, and I opted. I just realized I was not wired for it. I have my dad's temper. My dad is also not wired for it because of his temper, but he stuck it out. And my poor brother, who, again, loves golfing and does it a lot on his own, he went on a golf trip with my parents to Ireland last year.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was great. It was, we had like 4 days of golf, I want to say. We were in Portmarnock, and then we went out to the K Club in County Kildare, which is pretty posh, really nice. And but after the first two rounds, I don't know if you have this with your father, but it's hard sometimes to give notes to your father, like to his face.
Yeah.
So I had to send him an email that was like, hey, if you're going to be that angry on the golf course, then like, let's go sightseeing. We don't have to play golf. Like, I want to have fun. We're here in Ireland. It's beautiful. It's like historic. And if you're going to be that angry, let's skip it. And he wrote back just a 2-word reply that was like, we play. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
Dude, that sounds like someone I would get along with.
And then he unsubscribed from his son's emails.
Amazing.
He didn't want it.
It's so funny, like what you say about giving your dad notes. I'm not at that stage in my life yet where I can do that. You know, I have a lot of respect for my dad, and I would really struggle. This morning, I must have called my dad 9 times because I really want to talk to him. I miss him. I haven't spoken to him in a couple of days. We went to a comedy show last night. I feel really close to him for going, so I wanted to speak to him, and he didn't answer the phone. So I wrote this text message, which was like, Dad, why do you bother having a phone if you're never going to answer it? And then I deleted it because I'm like, I can't send that to my dad. I just said, tried you a bunch of times, Dad. Give me a call back when you can. So I need to maybe learn how to be more honest with my dad, maybe.
My parents will drive to visit me and my family, and it's about a 3-hour drive. And so my wife will say, do you know when they're going to be here? And I'll call my dad's cell phone, and I'll call my mom's cell phone, and I'll call my dad. And I know it's just 2 of them in a car.
Yeah.
And I cannot wrap my head around what is going on with the cell phones.
No, it's ridiculous.
Neither of them. Yeah.
It's my dad. My dad has the same thing I have. I have this really terrible noise intolerance thing. Like I just, my ADHD, like if we're having this conversation now and there is just the slightest constant noise, my brain doesn't work. I can't hold a conversation. My dad's is so severe that I guess the ringtone of his phone just sets him on edge. So he's like, I'm going to just have no ring at all. So what we now have to do is we have to figure out which brother is in closest proximity to mum and dad and call one of them. And then I feel really bad because I call my brother Paddy and I'm like, you can tell he's excited to chat. And you're like, Paddy, is mum there? So that now I'm like, I have to like check myself and be, hey, Paddy, how are you? It's nice to see you. Anyway, where's mom and dad? I'm fucking calling them for hours.
Now you'd mentioned your mom's in charge of the vacations. Yeah. She also, is it true that she was in charge of finding you an apartment or a place to live? And can you just let everybody know where, it's kind of incredible luck where she found a place for you to live? Yeah.
And it's also, I can add to that story now. It's 2 for 2. She found me a wonderful apartment. I loved living there. It is a few 100 feet from my parents' house. Okay. And at the time,
So
I
she
thought it was
cast a wide
great.
net.
I was a young kid. I still had my mum's cooking. I could somewhat justify bringing my laundry over there. And then I outgrew the place. I needed somewhere a little bit more private. I found a house. I fell in love with the house. I moved in. That house is just a few 100 feet from that apartment. So I'm still just as close. Surprise, surprise. Who found the house? My mum found the house. So I live in a lovely house with 2 of my brothers, 2 of my best friends, and my parents live only down the road. So we are a very tight-knit little group, and, we see each other all the time.
Which 2 of the brothers?
Harry and Sam, the twins.
So you live with the twins?
Yeah, and what's great about
Okay.
living with Sam is that he's a chef, a professional chef.
Oh, great.
A great one at that. So, and he's doing these Instagram videos where he, is teaching people how to cook things easily for cheaply. If you're a young kid who's trying to live in London and it's incredibly expensive right now, go to Sam's Instagram and you'll find out how to make easy dishes quickly. And we just get to come home and feast on all the food that he's been making for these videos. So I haven't cooked in months, which is great. So living with Sam is awesome.
Are you a good cook when you cook?
I would consider myself a good cook. Zendaya doesn't seem to like my cooking.
All right.
But the upside to me cooking to Zendaya cooking is that I'll finish with 10 digits. And if Zendaya cooks, she'll slice one of her fingers off. Because I don't know why she decides to chop up vegetables like she's some sort of samurai. Like it is the most stressful experience ever. But no, so I do the majority of the cooking when it's just the 2 of us.
I do feel like that would come down on you. I feel like her agent would leave you a very strongly worded voicemail if you let Zendaya cook and she lost one of her fingers.
Mate, when we were in New York doing The Crowded Room, she came to visit. She was lovely enough to cook dinner for when I got home from work. And I came home, I saw an empty kitchen with food everywhere, a really bloody rag and a knife, and was like, oh my God, what's happened? And she'd cut herself. Like really badly too. And she's like, I think it's fine. Showed me her finger and I was like, we need to go to the hospital. Like you need stitches. Like that is really deep. She ended up getting stitches and she was fine. And she was actually a real, she was a boss about it. Nothing, no anesthetic, nothing. She just straight in, had the sutures and was fine. But yeah, so she's cut herself a few times. She'll probably hate me for telling you that story.
You said she was a boss. If I cut my finger cooking, I would tell my wife to just leave me to die.
Yeah, mate, I'd black out.
Yeah.
I'd black out.
In New York City, I'm like, no, it's just better to leave me to die. Move on without me. I want to go back to golf real quick. I assume a lot of people, the most famous person they've played golf with is you. But who's the most famous person you've played golf with?
That's a good question. I mean, I've been lucky. I've played with some very famous golfers. I played with Jordan Spieth.
Right.
A few weeks ago, I played with Colin Morikawa and Kurt Kitayama, which was a real honor. I'm delighted to say that I went 4 up on Colin, the front 9.
Wow.
And then he absolutely annihilated me on the back 9 and won the match.
I feel like that speaks to your ability to rise to the moment. I would be again, I'm a terrible golfer to begin with,
Right.
but do you feel like more pressure when you're with a professional golfer?
I'm like a real pressure person. I really, really thrive under pressure. I love the feeling of being stressed and being overwhelmed. Like I get like this really weird kick out of it. So anytime I'm playing golf, I joke that like if you get a camera out, I'm doing something special. Like I don't know what it is about being on camera, but like I love it. There's something about it. I was playing a few years ago, playing some of the worst golf I've ever played in my life. I was in a real hole, but I'd signed up to do this pro-am. Thousands of people showed up. It's on live television. And I don't know what happened. I played the best round of golf I've ever played in my life. It was the best. Honestly, everything I've achieved in my career, that was the best day of my life.
I would imagine.
Wow.
Do you ever, when you have like a bad front 9 like you had the other day, do you ever turn to your friends and be like, the problem is you're not famous enough?
Yeah, exactly.
If you guys
I said,
were more famous.
Why are you all just so unbelievably ordinary? It's so frustrating.
No pressure here. Yeah, when Seth golfs, I don't know if there's a difference in Seth's baseball stance and his golf stance.
Yeah, I like to have one stance for all the sports.
You're just slightly bent over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
good.
exactly. but it's the same. It looks like it's the same grip on the club. But
That's no good. Josh, what's your handicap?
I'm like at 16.
Okay,
It's
so you
not.
play good golf,
I'm
though.
nothing. I'm all right. Yeah.
What are you currently, Tom?
I'm currently a 4, but I'm not shooting to a 4 right now. I just had some lessons to go through a few swing changes to get my bad rounds. My bad rounds are really bad and my good rounds are really good. There's no middle ground. So I'm working on a bit of consistency. So in those lessons, I have sort of lost the ability to play golf right now. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'll bring it back and start striping it again, I'm sure.
Nice.
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we were originally going to call this podcast "Twins, Can We Trust Them?"
Right.
You have you have brothers that are twins.
Okay.
How is it living with twins?
To be perfectly honest with you, growing up, it's an absolute nightmare. Because like you have a fight with one of them, you have to fight both of them. And I was strong.
Because they're loyal to each other?
Well, they're best friends, you know. They shared the womb.
Are they identical?
They are not identical, although
Okay.
they don't even look remotely like brothers. I look more like Harry than Harry looks like Sam. I was making a film once. We were in the green room. My brothers came to visit me. You wouldn't know they were brothers had you just met them. And this actress I was working with, she was like, "Oh my God, you guys are like, you're twins." We were like, yeah, they're twins. It's really cool. And she said, "Are you identical?" We were like, I don't know. Take a guess, mate. But yeah, playing, I was very lucky when Paddy came along. We had 2 teams. We called ourselves the Singletons, Paddy and I, against the Doubletons, Sam and Harry. And what was great was, because I was older, I was better at sport just because of my age, nothing to do with my talent. So I was better and then disadvantaged by Paddy, which kind of leveled us out. And then Sam and Harry were, not as good as me, but because there was 2 of them, it kind of made a very equal team. And our parents were so good at sort of saying, "You're outside, go and play with your brothers. We didn't make all of you for nothing. You're not playing on the PlayStation. Go and play with the gifts that we gave you as parents, which is each other." So we were always just kicking the crap out of each other and playing football and rugby and cricket and tennis and all that sort of stuff. So we were very, very active kids.
It does seem like probably the necessity then to have active vacations. I feel like your parents wouldn't want to bring you somewhere where part of it was just sitting around and doing nothing.
Totally. And there's also like 4 boys. If you go back and watch any of our home videos, my parents both look like they're strung out on heroin. Like they honestly, they look so awful, bless them. And they are so tired because they went from 1 to 3 and Sam and Harry weren't easy. My mum and dad said the most peaceful experience when having twins is when you fly on an airplane, because they can't kill themselves. So you just sit there, let them run away. And he said that you'd see like Harry's red hair just pop up on a seat 6 aisles in front of them. And my parents are too tired to do anything about it.
It's very impressive that they then went for a 4. I mean, I feel like to survive twins, to be at 3, and then to roll the dice one more time and get Paddy, it's very, obviously says something about how much they like their kids.
I think, and I can say this because Paddy is aware of this, but they wanted a girl.
Yeah.
And along came Paddy, who really is like the shining star of our family. Like he's the funniest one. He's the most social one. He's the sportiest one. He's really incredibly artistic. He's just started painting and he's so good.
It's very hard to find a photo of Paddy where he doesn't have a very luminous smile, is my experience.
Paddy also has what I love. One of the things I love so much about Paddy is his laugh has never changed. So his giggle, when you get him going, I had the luxury the other day of Paddy was at home at my mum and dad's house. I was home alone. I wanted to watch a movie. I texted my Paddy. I said, "Bro, I'm at home. If you fancy coming over to have a movie night, let me know. I'm here." He says, "I'd love to." He comes over. I just bought this really cool little cinema drop-down screen thing in my living room, using it for probably the first time. And we're going through the arduous task of like scrolling through iTunes to try and find a film to watch. And he'd never seen This Is the End. And I was like, "Oh my God, I am so excited that you've never seen this film." And to sit there with my brother and hear him giggle like a 4-year-old at this film was like, honestly, one of the highlights of my year. It was amazing.
Josh and I don't, he's West Coast and I'm East Coast, and we don't see each other enough. And when we do, like I was in LA for a day, I like plan ahead the funny thing I want to watch.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, don't watch it without me, because I think that joy of watching something with a sibling, knowing in advance the sense of humor is going to line up, and it's just going to be no judgment, just joy. It's so much fun.
It's like my brother and I, this past week, we were in upstate New York playing some golf and just enjoying the countryside. And we, in the evening, watched an entire season of that show, Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. That show is amazing. Like, I'd never heard of it before. I'd never seen it. We're on Netflix. I love survival shows. There's this show called Alone, which I really love. I thought that's what I was getting myself into. Like, 10 survival experts are dropped in the wilderness and they have to survive for the longest they can. But I was like, what is this really weird show? And I was a little skeptical to begin with. And by the end of the last few episodes, I'm like, Michelle's gameplay there is off the charts. Like the way she's backstabbing so-and-so, like if she can get these people, I was so into it. So I'm excited to start a new season of that with my brother.
Great. All right, we have a few questions for you here at the end, and then we're going to let you go. First of all, thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you for having me.
I know you've taken some great vacations. Do you have any place left, dream vacation, you would want to go on?
With your family.
I'd love to go to Australia or New Zealand. I've never been to that part of the world. I've only heard that it's amazing. So if I was going to go away with my family, if we were going to do like a big family vacation, we are actually going away as a family at the end of next month. We're going for a little family golf trip, but I would like to go to Australia.
All right, great.
If you could go on vacation with any family that is not your family, who would you go on a family vacation with?
That's a great question. Probably Zendaya's family. Her family are amazing.
Oh,
That's great that you like her family.
Yeah, they're awesome people.
And I'm assuming, unless they have terrible taste, your family likes Zendaya.
Mm-hmm.
That's really nice.
Absolutely.
I would like it if you were like, no, they're the 5 people that
They're the only 5 people on the planet that just despise her.
It just is not working for them. They don't hate her. They just don't get it.
Don't understand it. Yeah.
All right. Another question. Last one. Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon?
I've flown over it.
Okay. That doesn't count.
I haven't been there.
Yeah.
Follow up. Do you want to go?
Are you inviting me?
Well, Seth doesn't want to go. Seth has no interest.
All of our guests, what we're going to do, Tom, is all of our guests, we're going to enter into a raffle.
Okay.
And at the end of the season, we're going to draw one name and pay an all-expense paid trip. So if you want to be entered in the raffle, I guess is the question.
Throw me in the raffle. I'd love to go and see that big crack in the ground.
Yep.
Never been something on my radar, really. But I think America really does have the most beautiful landscapes in the world. And what a great canyon you guys have. It's great one.
What a
this is coming off
as
as very sincere, how nice you're being about our canyon.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the canyon, guys. I would love to go to the Grand Canyon.
There we go.
I'm going to add this to the show notes so that everybody can see it, but I did want to show this to you, Tom. Someone recommended I show this to you. My middle son, who's 5, had a lemonade stand the other day, and he did wear his Spiderman outfit. And then it got a little cold, so he had to put a coat on over it. And just so you know, this isn't a competing Spider-Man because he wears glasses, so it's like it would be in a different universe where Peter Parker doesn't see great. But there's a dude.
I love it. Hilarious.
Yeah.
I love the coat over it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with it, but it's everything wrong with it makes it more right.
Of course.
It's a rabbit fur coat, right?
Yeah, it's a rabbit.
Yeah. He's still wearing fur.
That's hilarious.
And it's real rabbit. For our listeners, it's real rabbit.
And I'll be signing off now, guys.
Hey, Tom, what a delight to see your face and to get to talk to you about your just really amazing family. It's really cool how close you all are.
Thanks, dude. Well, it's lovely to see you both. Josh, it's nice to meet you. Seth, you know how much I love you, mate, and how much I enjoy doing your show. So thanks for having me, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
I look forward to the next time you're here. Check out The Crowded Room on Apple, and we will see you next time.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. I'll speak to you soon. All right, then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tom.
You may think his life is so majestic, but oftentimes it's really quite domestic. She is fine, but Zendaya cut her